Emotional attachment is not love, it's dependency. Read that again. We confuse attachment with love because it feels intense. It feels consuming. It feels like we need that person, and if we don't have them, we somehow become less. But that's the lie. That's the trap. Emotional attachment isn't power. It's the absence of power. It's surrendering your peace, your stability, your identity to someone else and calling it connection. But here's the real question you need to ask yourself. Why do you keep giving power to people who wouldn't do the same for you? That's the wound most people avoid looking at. You give someone your time, your thoughts, your emotions, your sleep. And for what? For a text back? For the illusion that you're needed? For the hit of dopamine when they look at you a certain way? That's not love. That's not strength. That's slavery. And the most dangerous kind. The kind you enter willingly. This is where the Stoics had it right. Love without attachment. Loyalty without dependence. Presence without possession. That's the mindset of a warrior, not someone who breaks every time they don't get what they want from another human being. You want to be respected? Start with yourself. Because no one respects a man who gives himself away so easily, who crumbles every time someone pulls back, who loses himself trying to keep someone else interested. That's not leadership. That's emotional bankruptcy. You've probably heard it before. She stopped texting me. I don't know what to do. He ghosted me. I feel worthless. She doesn't love me anymore. I feel like dying. Pause. You feel like dying because someone didn't choose you? You feel like you lost everything because someone else walked away? Let's break that illusion. You didn't lose them. You lost the image you built of yourself through them. That's what hurts. That's what shatters you. But that's not the end. That's the beginning. Because from that pain comes awareness. From that collapse comes the realization that you were never meant to be held together by someone else. Your validation, your peace, your emotional stability, that's your job, no one else's. Let me ask you this. How much of your day is wasted thinking about someone who doesn't think about you? How much energy do you drain replaying conversations that don't matter? How many decisions have you avoided because you're still emotionally locked to someone who has already moved on? Too many. Too often. This is the truth that will set you free, but it will also hurt. No one is coming to save you. The person you're obsessed with? They've moved on. The closure you're waiting for? It's not coming. The apology you think you deserve? You won't get it. Because that's not how life works. People don't owe you understanding. They don't owe you consistency. They don't owe you the version of them you built in your head. That's why emotional detachment is so powerful. Not because it turns you into a robot, but because it gives you your power back. You feel everything, but you're controlled by nothing. You care, but you don't crumble. You give, but never at the cost of yourself. This is what emotional strength looks like. You love someone, but you're okay if they walk. You show up, but you don't beg to stay. You invest, but you don't lose yourself in the process. Because the moment you need someone to stay in order to be okay, that's the moment you've handed over your power. And here's what they don't tell you. People can feel that. When you're needy, they pull back. When you're desperate, they lose respect. When you're emotionally unstable, they stop seeing you as a leader. Because emotional chaos is not attractive, it's dangerous. It signals insecurity. It smells like fear. And people may be drawn to it for a while, but eventually, they'll run. Because nobody wants to carry someone else's broken identity. So if you're here, asking how to detach emotionally, it starts with this. Rebuild your center. Reclaim your silence. Return to the core of who you are, without them. Start with your space. Start with your routine. Start with what you control. You don't need a grand strategy. You need consistency. You don't need closure. You need clarity. You don't need their validation. You need your own commitment to evolve. Sit in silence. Journal through the storm. Train your body. Clean your environment. Cut their access to your mind, not out of hate, but out of love for your future. Emotional detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care deeply, but never at your own expense. It means you're done being someone's emotional slave. You're done over-explaining your worth. You're done chasing people who don't know what to do with your value. And the moment you detach is the moment you become dangerous. Because now you're not reacting. You're not waiting. You're not hoping. You're moving. You're building. You're focused. And that's the version of you they'll respect, but only when you stop needing it. Because here's the final truth. You teach people how to treat you. And the longer you stay attached to someone who's inconsistent, the more you teach them that you'll tolerate it. So stop teaching weakness. Start walking in strength. It's not easy, but it's necessary. Because emotional detachment isn't just a skill. It's a survival tool in a world where people confuse your kindness for weakness and your patience for permission. So choose yourself, silently, consistently, powerfully, and never again give your soul to someone who didn't earn your silence. Understand emotional attachment. Before you can detach, you need to understand what you're really detaching from. Emotional attachment is not love. It's not connection. It's not presence. It's a form of possession, of control. It's trying to own something that was never yours to begin with, another person's actions, choices, or love. And when that need isn't met, it turns into suffering. But where does that attachment even come from? Let's strip it down to its core. Attachment is built on three things: need, fear, and ego. Need, the belief that someone else completes you, that you're not enough unless they approve, stay, love, or respond. Fear, the fear of abandonment, of loneliness, of being forgotten. That if they leave, your world collapses. That without them, you lose meaning, direction, identity. Ego, the story you tell yourself. They're mine. I deserve them. They owe me. The narrative that says, if they leave, it's a reflection of my worth. But none of that is real. Because here's the truth the world avoids. Healthy connection doesn't cling. It doesn't suffocate. It doesn't obsess. It doesn't require control to feel secure. Real love, real connection, is chosen, not forced. It's grounded in freedom, not fear. It's born from overflow, not emptiness. But when you're attached, you're not overflowing. You're leaking. You're pouring from a cup you haven't filled. You're begging from a place of lack. You're confusing intensity with intimacy, pain with passion, silence with punishment. Let's go deeper. Why do we get emotionally attached? Because we're insecure. That's the root. Not because we care too much. Not because we love deeply. But because we're afraid to face ourselves. So we latch onto someone else to avoid the silence inside. We look to them for meaning, for validation, for escape. We attach to avoid the one person we're terrified of meeting, ourselves. That's where the Stoics had a level of wisdom most people today can't even fathom. They didn't just preach detachment. They embodied self-sufficiency. They taught that you should never build your peace on something or someone you can lose. Because if your peace depends on another person's presence, you don't have peace. You have a temporary illusion that disappears the moment they leave. That's why Epictetus said, "He who depends on another for peace will never find it." Think about that. The moment your joy is tied to someone else's mood, the moment your confidence depends on their praise, the moment your identity is shaped by their presence, you're no longer in control. You've handed your entire emotional system to someone who has no responsibility to protect it. You've built a house on rented land, and every time the landlord decides to walk away, your whole foundation shakes. This is the part people don't like to hear. You can't control who stays. You can only control how much of yourself you give away hoping they do. And when you give too much too soon, out of fear, not strength, you lose yourself. You disappear trying to keep someone interested. You shrink trying to be what they want. You contort your soul to avoid discomfort, abandonment, or rejection. That's not love. That's addiction. And here's the thing about emotional addiction. It never fulfills. It only numbs. And like any addiction, the more you feed it, the more it controls you. So how do you break it? You stop pretending your attachment is romantic. You stop labeling your dependency as love. You stop blaming them for not staying, and start asking why you gave them the power to wreck you in the first place. You go inward. You rebuild your self-worth, not on attention, but on alignment. Not on approval, but on self-awareness. Not on being chosen, but on choosing yourself every single day. Start small. Start with silence. Start with honesty. Start by admitting where your pain really comes from. It's not their rejection. It's your self-rejection. It's not their absence. It's the emptiness you feel in their absence. Because if their distance creates a crisis inside you, that means they were filling a void you were too afraid to face. That's where the real work begins. Face the void. Sit with it. Write about it. Don't run from it. Learn from it. Because the more you numb it with distractions, rebounds, fake confidence, or shallow affirmations, the deeper it grows. Detachment isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming whole. It's not about pushing people away. It's about refusing to collapse when they leave. It's not about ignoring your emotions. It's about refusing to be owned by them. Let's get this straight. You can care deeply, and still walk away when respect is gone. You can love fully and still hold boundaries when they're crossed. You can feel everything and still choose not to act from impulse or fear. That's true power. That's emotional maturity. That's Stoicism in action. Because the Stoics didn't teach numbness. They taught mastery. They didn't avoid pain. They understood it. They prepared for it. They didn't suppress their emotions. They just never let them rule. And neither should you. Let this be the moment you stop lying to yourself. The person you're attached to, they don't complete you. They distract you from the work. The fantasy you've built in your mind, it's not real. It's comfort in disguise. The pain you're avoiding, it's not punishment. It's a teacher. So listen to it. Learn from it. And most importantly, act on it. Detach. Not from love, not from people, but from the need to be chosen, validated, saved. Choose yourself. Let love come as a bonus, not a band-aid. Let relationships be partnerships, not emotional shelters. Let people walk and still be whole when they do. That's emotional detachment. That's emotional strength. And that, Santana, is how you start building a mind that doesn't break when the world does. The cost of attachment. Attachment always comes with a cost. The price isn't paid all at once. It's slow, quiet, invisible at first. But over time, it drains you. It eats at your peace. It breaks your confidence. It distorts your sense of self. You start thinking about them when you wake up. You check your phone, hoping for a message that never comes. You replay old conversations in your head, trying to decode their silence. You imagine what they're doing, who they're with, why they changed. And all of it, is happening in your mind, not in reality. That's why Seneca said, you suffer more in imagination than in reality. You're not suffering because of what's happening. You're suffering because of what you're imagining. Because when you're attached to someone, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, your mind becomes a prisoner of possibility. You start living in a world that doesn't exist. One where they might come back. One where maybe they're just busy. One where if I just do this, maybe they'll notice me again. And the more time you spend in that world, the more distant you become from the real one. Let's be brutally honest. Attachment kills self-respect. Every time you betray your boundaries to keep someone around, you lose a piece of yourself. Every time you overextend, overexplain, or overgive just to maintain their interest, you tell your soul, I'm not enough on my own. You don't say it with words. You say it with actions, with silence, with tolerance, with the way you keep showing up for people who barely show up for you. That's not love. That's desperation dressed as devotion. And desperation always pushes people away. But it's worse than that. Because even if they stay, even if they give you attention, you've still paid the price. Your power, your dignity, your peace of mind, gone. And here's where it gets dangerous. Attachment creates emotional instability. You start living on highs and lows. A good text. You're euphoric. They're distant for a day. You're spiraling. One word from them can lift your mood. Another can destroy your day. You're no longer grounded in you. You're floating in them. And the scariest part? You call this normal. You call this passion. You call this intensity. You call this falling in love. But it's not love. It's dependency. And dependency breeds weakness. Because when your happiness depends on someone else, you're never in control. You're constantly adjusting to their behavior, their energy, their moods, while forgetting your own. That's how people lose themselves. Not in a dramatic collapse, but in 1,000 small concessions. You stop doing what you love, so you can be more available. You stop speaking up because you don't want to seem difficult. You stop listening to your gut because you'd rather please than confront. Eventually, you wake up and realize you've molded yourself to fit their life, and in the process, stepped out of your own. You've gone from being a man with direction, values, purpose, to being someone who anxiously checks their phone, hopes for a response, and doubts their worth based on how someone else feels that day. You weren't made for this, and the Stoics knew it. They taught that the wise man is emotionally self-sufficient, that nothing outside his control can truly disturb him, unless he gives it permission. But attachment does the opposite. It gives the world a key to your inner peace. And once you hand that key to someone else, they don't have to do much to hurt you. All it takes is silence, distance, indifference, the absence of something you've become dependent on. That's how powerful attachment is. It gives the illusion of connection while slowly destroying your identity. You'll find yourself obsessing over their behavior, reading between the lines, scrolling through old messages, wondering what you did wrong, even when you did everything right. This overthinking doesn't stop. It builds. Because attachment breeds anxiety. Anxiety leads to overthinking. Overthinking leads to self-doubt. And self-doubt leads to emotional chaos. You lose clarity. You lose stillness. You lose your center. And the saddest part? You did it to yourself. They didn't take your power. You gave it to them. Willingly. Quietly. Over time. Now here's the hard question. What are you willing to lose to stay attached? Are you willing to lose your peace? Your dignity? Your direction? Your sleep? Your self-worth? For someone who doesn't even notice the war inside your mind? It sounds insane because it is. But most people are doing it daily. That's why detachment isn't cold. It's necessary. It's not giving up. It's waking up. It's realizing that no matter how much you care, you can't pour your soul into someone who won't even hold it with respect. You can't love someone into loving you back. You can't fix someone by breaking yourself. You can't force alignment through attachment. So what do? You reclaim your power. You feel the pain, but you don't worship it. You acknowledge the loss, but you don't become it. You grieve, but you don't beg. You don't chase. You don't shrink. You build. You get back to discipline. You return to your routine. You pour your energy into growth, not obsession. You train your mind to stay grounded in truth, not fantasy. And you repeat this one truth over and over. I'd rather lose them than lose myself again. That's the line. That's the boundary. That's the beginning of freedom. Because every time you choose yourself over attachment, you rebuild self-respect. Every time you stay still instead of reacting, you strengthen emotional stability. Every time you stop checking, stop hoping, stop overthinking, you regain control. You become dangerous again, not to others, but to your old patterns. To the version of you that tolerated crumbs. To the mindset that thought begging was love. To the weakness that came from needing someone more than you needed yourself. So remember, the cost of attachment is high, and the return is low, and the only one who pays the price is you. Choose differently. Detach. Heal. Rise. Emotional detachment is not a cold retreat. It's a return to self. When you've been wrapped up in someone, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, detachment can feel like death. It feels like something is being torn from your body, ripped out of your chest. But the truth is, what's being removed isn't a piece of you. It's the illusion that they were ever a part of you to begin with. Detachment is not the loss of something real. It's the loss of a fantasy, a role you played, a version of yourself you molded to keep them around. And now, you get to come back to who you really are. But here's the catch. You may not know who that is anymore. Because when you've been emotionally dependent, your identity has slowly been absorbed by theirs. Your routines revolved around them. Your mood depended on them. Your worth, your validation, your sense of direction, it all got filtered through their presence, their opinion, their attention. And now that they're gone, you feel empty. But that emptiness isn't a void. It's a blank canvas. It's not a sign you've lost yourself. It's an opportunity to rediscover who you truly are, without noise, without approval, without distraction. The Stoics taught that self-knowledge is the root of all power. They didn't just say know thyself as a quote. They lived it. They practiced it daily. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journal, not to look wise, but to examine his soul. Epictetus taught that freedom begins the moment you stop placing your identity in things you don't control. You don't control their love. You don't control their attention. You don't control whether they stayed or walked away. But you do control who you choose to become now. And that starts with a raw, honest question. Who are you without them? Strip away their name. Strip away the story. Strip away the highs and the hopes and the potential. What's left? Most people avoid that silence. They fill it with noise. Music, scrolling, new people, old habits. Anything to escape the truth that they don't know who they are without being wanted. But you're not most people. You don't escape the silence. You enter it. You sit in solitude. You let the pain speak. You let your journal bleed. You get still enough to hear your own voice again. That's what reclaiming your identity looks like. Not yelling, not proving, not replacing, but remembering. Remembering who you were before you met them, who you've become while surviving them, and who you now choose to be, with or without anyone else in the picture. Because here's the truth. You are not what they gave you, or what they took from you. If they gave you love, attention, warmth, that doesn't mean your worth came from them. And if they gave you silence, rejection, confusion, That doesn't mean you're not worthy of love now. You were whole before they arrived. You are whole after they leave. Nothing was added. Nothing was lost. Only illusions. The Stoics called this apatheia, not indifference, but inner harmony. A state where your emotions no longer control you, where your peace is self-made, where your identity is grounded in what cannot be taken. That's the goal. To be untouchable not because you're numb, but because you're clear. And clarity begins with boundaries. Who are you, even when no one's watching? What do you value when no one is validating you? What will you no longer tolerate, even if it means being alone? Reclaiming your identity means answering those questions, not with words, but with your daily life. It means choosing routines that rebuild you, waking up early, writing your truth, moving your body, protecting your space, saying no with conviction, saying yes only to what aligns with your highest standard. It means living as if your life is your own, because it is. You're not a side character in someone else's story. You're not a plot twist in their drama. You're the author of your existence, and it's time you started writing like it. That's where detachment becomes liberation. Not because you stop caring about people, but because you stop abandoning yourself for them. You stop seeking closure from people who can't even give you clarity. You stop replaying old moments hoping they'll mean something different this time. You stop looking for yourself in eyes that never really saw you. And in that stillness, in that silence, in that raw self-honesty, you find something stronger than love. You find power. The power of a man who knows himself. The power of someone who no longer needs attention to feel valuable. Who no longer begs for clarity. Who no longer compromises just to be seen. The kind of power that walks away without anger. The kind of power that stays calm when others pull away. The kind of power that rebuilds, not to prove a point, but because peace demands it. You weren't put on this earth to revolve around someone else's emotions. You weren't born to shrink so someone else could feel secure. You weren't made to abandon your path for love that can't meet you where you are. You were made to live from truth, to lead with integrity, to love without losing yourself. So now, when the thoughts come, and they will, you don't push them away. You observe, you feel, but you don't react. You stay centered. You remind yourself, over and over, I am not what they gave me. I am not what they took. I am not their silence. I am not their attention. I am mine. And every single day, you act in alignment with that truth. Because identity isn't found. It's reclaimed through action, through decision, through discipline. You reclaim it by saying no to what disrespects you, by saying yes to solitude, by choosing discomfort over dependence, and by holding the line when everything in you wants to run back to familiarity. You are not the version of you that begged. You are not the version of you that broke. You are not the version of you that clung to a connection already gone. You are who you choose to become today. And today, you choose peace. You choose clarity. You choose self-respect. That's the work. That's the freedom. That's what detachment gives you. Not the absence of feeling, but the presence of power. You're not emotionless. You're emotionally disciplined. You're not cold. You're calm. You're not numb. You're awake. And that's where your real identity begins. Right here. Right now. Not in who you lost, but in who you're becoming. In the modern world, detachment is often misunderstood. It's seen as coldness, as apathy, as emotional distance. But in Stoicism, detachment, or more accurately, indifference, is not about caring less. It's about caring correctly. It's not about suppressing your emotions. It's about gaining mastery over them. Not so you become emotionless, but so you stop being enslaved by them. When you're emotionally attached to someone, your inner peace is no longer yours. It's now tied to their actions, their moods, their availability, their approval. Every delay in their response becomes a mini crisis. Every small rejection becomes a wound. You've handed them the remote control to your mind. That's not love. That's self-abandonment. Stoicism teaches you to take that remote control back. Not with rage, not with resistance, but with calm, deliberate detachment. Let's begin with the foundation of all Stoic thought, the dichotomy of control. What is in your control? Your thoughts, your actions, your choices, your energy. What is not in your control? How others feel, what others do, whether someone stays or leaves, whether they love you or not. The moment you realize that, deeply, not just intellectually, you begin to taste real freedom. You stop reacting. You start observing. You stop trying to change people. You start changing your response to people. And that's where indifference becomes powerful. Stoic indifference is not passive. It's not, I don't care. It's, I'm no longer enslaved by what doesn't depend on me. Marcus Aurelius said, choose not to be harmed, and you won't be. Think about that. You don't need someone to apologize for you to be at peace. You don't need closure to move forward. You don't need them to understand you, respect you, or value you, for you to value yourself. When you stop giving others emotional power over you, you reclaim something sacred, self-command. Indifference begins with non-reactivity. You receive a cold message from someone you care about? Observe it. Don't spiral. Don't jump to conclusions. Don't ask, what does this mean? Instead, ask, what can I control right now? You see them giving someone else the attention they used to give you? Don't let jealousy take the wheel. Remind yourself, that's outside my domain. I'm responsible for how I carry myself, not how others behave. This is not about suppressing your feelings. You will feel things. You're human. But the Stoic approach is, don't react. Reflect. Create space between stimulus and response. Someone ghosts you? That's information, not devastation. Someone disrespects you? That's a test, not a tragedy. Your task is not to chase, beg, or force anything. Your task is to observe with clarity and respond with virtue. And here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Your emotions are not facts. Your fear that they'll leave doesn't mean they will. Your anxiety that they're bored with you doesn't mean they are. Your overthinking about their behavior doesn't reflect their truth. It reflects your insecurity. The Stoic way is to separate perception from reality. That's where indifference lives. You don't become cold. You become clear. You don't become numb. You become disciplined. You still feel, but you don't let feelings run the show. Let's make this practical. Every time you feel triggered by someone's actions, pause. Ask, is this in my control? Respond with reason, not emotion. That's Stoic indifference in action. If someone pulls away from you, don't panic, observe. If they test your boundaries, don't react, assert calmly. If they leave, don't chase, release with dignity. Indifference is not pretending you don't care. It's reminding yourself you care more about your peace than someone's inconsistency. You don't need to stop loving someone to detach. You just need to stop letting that love cost you your sanity. You're allowed to feel. You're allowed to grieve. But you're not allowed to surrender your inner stability in the name of attachment. Now, let's bring this even deeper. Stoicism is not about rejecting connection. It's about anchoring your identity within yourself, not in the fragile opinions or actions of others. You are not what they did to you. You are not what they failed to see in you. You are what you choose to be in this moment. So if someone leaves, the question is not why. The question is, who do I want to be in response to this? Do I chase, or do I choose myself? Do I spiral, or do I self-regulate? Do I let pain define me, or do I use it to deepen my discipline? That is indifference. That is stoicism. That is power. It's easy to be calm when everything is going well. It's hard to be calm when someone's pulling away from you. It's hard to be calm when your heart is involved and your mind is running wild. But that's when you must rise. Not to suppress, but to stabilize. When you feel the emotional wave, breathe. When you feel abandoned, write. When you feel desperate, move. Channel energy. Don't let it consume you. Train yourself to respond with calm presence, not chaos. And if you slip, it's okay. This is a practice. Like physical training, mental and emotional detachment is built through repetition. Every time you pause instead of reacting, you grow stronger. Every time you choose peace over panic, you rewire your brain. Every time you say, I don't need that to be okay, you claim more power. Stoic indifference is the art of holding your center in a world, and in relationships, designed to pull you out of it. You stop trying to control outcomes. You start mastering your character. And over time, something incredible happens. People start feeling your energy shift. You're no longer needy. You're grounded. You're no longer anxious. You're anchored. You're no longer performing to gain love. You're living in love with your own being. And that changes everything. Not because you force someone to love you, but because you stop needing them to. The moment you detach from the outcome, the dynamic changes. Not because you manipulated, but because you chose mastery over madness. Remember, attachment says, I need you to feel okay. Detachment says, I'm okay, no matter what you do. That is freedom. That is strength. That is stoicism. And you? You are no longer a slave to emotions. You are the commander of your state. So next time your heart wants to panic, remind yourself of this. Choose not to be harmed, and you won't be. Not because the world won't hurt, but because you've trained your mind to be unshaken by it. That's the power of indifference. That's emotional detachment. And that's how you take your life back, one calm decision at a time. Cut access, not just contact. Detachment isn't just about deleting a number or muting someone's profile. It's not about blocking a phone or erasing a name from your contacts. That's surface level. That's cosmetic. The real detachment, the kind that sets you free, comes when you cut access, not just contact. It's not what they can say to you now that keeps you stuck. It's what they still occupy inside of you. Your thoughts, your energy, your habits, your emotional availability, your late-night memory loops. That's where the chain still exists. And unless you sever that access point, the pain will recycle. The longing will remain. The triggers will return. Cutting contact is a decision. Cutting access is a lifestyle shift. Let's break this down. Emotional access, the invisible rope. Even when someone is gone physically, they can still occupy your inner world. You still check their profile. You still overanalyze what went wrong. You still write unsent messages in your notes app. You still think about what you could have done differently. They're not texting you, but you're still mentally texting them all day long. And here's what most people never realize. The conversation in your mind is keeping the pain alive. It's not them anymore. It's you replaying them. So how do you end that loop? By reclaiming your attention like it's sacred. Because it is. Step 1. Stop checking their socials. You already know this. But let's go deeper. Every time you open their page, just to see what they're doing, you're betraying your own healing. Every scroll is a needle in your peace. And worse, you create imaginary stories based on what you see. You see a smile? You assume they're over you. You see a friend? You assume they've replaced you. You see silence? You assume it's meant to hurt you. But none of that's truth. It's your mind creating pain out of pixels. So what's the move? Unfollow. Block if necessary. Not for them, for you. Because healing isn't about being mature enough to handle exposure. It's about being wise enough to avoid what weakens your discipline. Step 2. Stop replaying conversations. One of the most subtle ways you keep emotional access alive is through mental loops. You keep going back to the last fight, the last goodbye, the I love you that didn't age well. You dissect every sentence, every emoji, every silence. You want closure. You want understanding. But here's the truth. Closure is not something they give you. Closure is what you give yourself when you stop asking for it. Replaying the past doesn't fix it. It just reopens it. Every time you rewatch the movie in your head, your heart gets tricked into thinking it's happening again. Break the loop, not by pushing it down, but by redirecting your energy. When the mind starts spiraling into the past, interrupt the pattern. Write something. Move your body. Read a book. Journal. Reflect on your growth. The discipline isn't in not thinking about them. The discipline is in not staying stuck there. Step 3. Remove emotional triggers from your space. You can't heal in the same emotional space that reminds you of what hurt you. That hoodie they left? Box it. That playlist you both loved? Archive it for now. That wall of photos? Take it down. You're not deleting the memory. You're choosing peace. Emotional triggers aren't just obvious. Sometimes they're subconscious. A candle scent. A show you both watched. A coffee shop you always passed by. Don't underestimate how much your environment holds memory. Changing your space equals changing your energy. Create a space that reflects you now, not you with them. You are evolving. Let your space evolve with you. Step 4. Audit your circle. Sometimes, it's not even the person who's hurting you. It's the people who keep bringing them up. The friend who just wants to check if you're okay. The mutuals who keep you updated. The social group that still posts them. That access needs to be limited too. You don't have to be rude, but you do have to be ruthless with your peace. Let people know, hey, I'm healing. I'd prefer not to talk about them. If they respect you, they'll understand. If they don't, they're part of the problem, not your solution. Why cutting access is so hard? Because we're addicted to the idea of emotional closure. We think if we keep them in our energy long enough, they'll finally realize something. They'll miss us. They'll return. They'll give us what they didn't. But that's not healing. That's bargaining. And bargaining keeps you stuck in a loop where your peace depends on someone else's change. Real detachment doesn't come from getting what you wanted. It comes from realizing you don't need it anymore. Detachment is an energy shift. You don't have to announce it. You don't have to make it dramatic. You just move differently. less available, less reactive, less involved, more focused, more grounded, more connected to your mission than to your memories. That's the shift. From discipline to freedom. There's a quote, "Discipline equals freedom," and it applies here more than ever. The discipline to not text them at 2 a.m., that becomes the freedom of sleeping peacefully. The discipline to not check their story, that becomes the freedom of a clear mind. The discipline to remove their energy from your space, that becomes the freedom to create something new within you and around you. Detachment isn't punishment. It's purification. You're not erasing your feelings. You're eliminating the neediness in those feelings. You're keeping the love, but removing the dependence. You're keeping the lessons, but releasing the illusion. That's powerful. That's peaceful. That's you, taking your power back. Final words. When you cut access, the silence will feel loud at first. But over time, it becomes peace. When you stop checking their life, yours begins to move again. When you remove their energy from your space, your own energy expands. You don't need to hate them. You don't need revenge. You just need to decide. To stop rehearsing what hurt. To stop reliving what's over. To stop giving access to someone who's no longer aligned with your healing. Detachment is not a one-time event. It's a daily decision to choose yourself. And you don't owe anyone an explanation for that. Cut the access. Hold the boundary. And watch your life rise from the ashes of what you thought you needed. Emotional detachment isn't just about cutting someone off. It's about reclaiming the energy you used to give them and putting it into yourself. Pain is energy. Obsession is energy. Overthinking is energy. And energy, when redirected with intention, becomes power. You don't heal by sitting in sadness. You heal by building. You heal by rising. You heal by growing into the version of yourself that no longer needs them to feel whole. Let's be real. When you were emotionally attached, they occupied space in your mind every single day. You woke up thinking about them. You went to sleep analyzing conversations. You checked your phone. You checked their socials. You overanalyzed silence. You replayed the past. But what if, instead of giving all that time to them, you gave it back to yourself? This is the art of transmutation, turning pain into power, turning what breaks you into what builds you. And it starts here. Your energy is currency. Spend it wisely. Imagine your attention is money. Every thought you give to someone is a payment. Every scroll through their profile is an invoice. Every time you imagine them with someone else, you're investing your mental capital into someone else's life. But what are you getting in return? Pain, confusion, insecurity, delay. Meanwhile, your life is waiting. Your body is waiting for movement. Your mind is waiting for new knowledge. Your goals are waiting for pursuit. And every minute you waste on what left is a minute stolen from what could become. So here's the move. Redirect. Redirect into fitness. The gym is therapy without the talking. Every rep is a reminder that you are stronger than you think. Every drop of sweat is pain leaving your body. Every session is proof that you are disciplined, powerful, and capable of transformation. When you feel the urge to text them, train instead. When you feel anxiety coming, move your body. Build your body, not to impress them, but to prove to yourself that you are in control. Not over them, over you. And here's the truth. You won't feel like it at first. You'll be tired, heavy, unmotivated. But discipline is the medicine for emotional chaos. You don't move when you feel like it. You move until you feel different. Because once your physical energy rises, your emotional energy changes. Redirect into business. Let's talk money. Not for validation, not for status, but for freedom. When you were attached to them, how many hours did you lose? Scrolling, overthinking, doubting, waiting. Now imagine if you put that time into building a skill, starting a side hustle, reading books on branding, investing, or content creation, launching a product, creating something you own, control, and benefit from. Pain is fuel, but only when used with focus. You don't heal by watching them win on social media. You heal by becoming a threat to your former self. Every hour they're not in your life anymore. That's an hour you can use to build the life they were never meant to complete. Let them go. Build your business. And watch how peace pays dividends. Redirect into journaling. Detachment doesn't mean ignoring your feelings. It means processing them in a way that creates clarity, not confusion. That's where journaling comes in. Open the page. Write the truth. Write the anger, the sadness, the resentment. But then, write the lessons. Write the promises you make to yourself. Write the version of you that is rising from this. Why journaling? Because your mind is not a storage unit. It's not meant to carry every memory, every thought, every regret. Journaling takes the noise out of your head and puts it where it belongs, on paper. And with every word you write, the pain loses power and you gain perspective. It's not about being poetic. It's about being honest. You don't have to share it with anyone, but let it be a mirror. Let it be a release. Let it be your proof that healing isn't passive, it's intentional. Redirect into new goals. Attachment thrives in emptiness. When your day has no mission, your mind wanders backward. So fill your days, not with distraction, with intention. Ask yourself, what version of me do I now have the opportunity to become? Set a 30-day challenge. Read a book a week. Wake up at 5 a.m. Learn a new skill. Travel somewhere alone. Start the YouTube channel. Build the business. Train for the race. Write the book. Take the course. Your attachment shrinks as your purpose expands. Let the breakup be the catalyst. Let the disappointment be the motivation. Let the ending become the beginning of your rebirth. The equation, time x focus equals identity. Here's the formula nobody teaches. Time x focus equals identity. Who you become is not based on what you feel. It's based on what you repeatedly focus on. If you focus on the past, you stay there. If you focus on them, you remain under their emotional influence. But if you focus on you, you rise. You evolve. You become someone that your old self would look at and say, damn, I didn't know we could be that strong. That's the reward of redirection. It doesn't happen instantly, but it does happen daily. Every time you choose growth over reaction, you heal. Every time you choose creation over overthinking, you rise. Every time you choose peace over panic, you win. Transcend. Don't just move on. This isn't about replacing them. It's about replacing the version of yourself who needed them to feel enough. You're not just detaching from a person. You're detaching from a mindset that said, I need them to feel complete. That mindset kept you small. That mindset made you beg, chase, and wait. But now you are choosing a different path. A path of sovereignty, of self-command, of quiet power. You don't rise by pretending you're not hurt. You rise by channeling that hurt into something meaningful. Let them become fuel. Let your pain become art. Let your story be your strength. Final reflection. Redirection isn't escape. It's evolution. Every time you take the energy you once gave away and reinvest it into yourself, you grow. It might feel lonely at first, but there's nothing lonelier than giving your soul to someone who doesn't value it. Now you choose differently. Now you reclaim your time, your attention, your strength. You don't wait for peace. You build it. Through discipline, through effort, through self-love that isn't soft, it's structured. You gave them enough. Now it's your turn. Letting go is not weakness, it's mastery. Let's stop pretending. Letting go doesn't mean you didn't care. It doesn't mean it didn't hurt. It doesn't mean it was easy. Letting go means you finally started choosing yourself. It means you decided your peace was more important than their inconsistency. It means you realized closure doesn't come from them. It comes from within. That's not weakness. That's power. You don't detach because you're cold. You detach because you're done bleeding for people who won't stop cutting. You detach because you understand this truth. Caring doesn't mean suffering. Loyalty doesn't mean losing yourself. Love doesn't mean giving someone permission to disrespect your soul. Detachment isn't about bitterness. It's about boundaries. It's about refusing to continue feeding a connection that starves your spirit. Because here's what no one tells you. You can't heal while staying in the same emotional prison. You can't evolve while being chained to their silence. You can't grow if every step forward requires looking back to see if they're watching. Let go. Not because they deserve it, but because you do. The real battle wasn't with them, it was with you. The truth is, it was never about them. It was about the version of yourself that kept holding on. The one who needed validation. The one who feared being alone. The one who thought their love meant something about your worth. And now, that version of you is dying, and a new one is being born. One that understands. Detachment is self-respect. Distance is medicine. Silence is strength. You stop waiting for the apology. You stop hoping they'll change. You stop rereading messages that don't deserve your energy. You simply let go, not because they asked for it, but because your future did. What you release, releases you. They were a lesson, not a life sentence. You don't need them to say sorry. You don't need to understand why. You don't need another explanation, another maybe, Another false hope. You need peace. And peace doesn't beg. Peace doesn't wait. Peace doesn't bargain. Peace is built from within. And it starts the moment you say, I no longer need this to make sense to let it go. That is real power. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet certainty. You don't slam the door. You just don't open it anymore. Stop chasing closure. Start creating it. They won't give you closure. Why? Because the same person who broke your peace is not capable of restoring it. You've been hoping for a conversation that won't happen. You've been waiting for them to say what you already know. You've been stuck in a loop, not because you don't understand what happened, but because you haven't accepted it. Stop waiting. Stop explaining your heart to someone who's already shown they don't speak your language. Closure is not an answer. It's a decision. You decide it ends. You decide you've learned enough. You decide you deserve better. And from that moment on, you no longer live in reaction. You live in creation. Emotional detachment is not coldness. It's clarity. It doesn't mean your heart is frozen. It means your mind is finally clear. You're not numb. You're no longer addicted. You're not closed off. You've just stopped leaving the door open for people who only bring storms. You still love deeply, but now you love wisely. You still feel everything, but now you filter what deserves your energy. You've stopped romanticizing pain. You've started romanticizing peace. That's emotional mastery. To still feel, but not be ruled. To still care, but not be controlled. To still give, but not to those who only take. This is what it means to detach. To no longer chase what confuses you. To no longer obsess over what you can't control. To no longer make a home inside someone who keeps changing the locks. The shift from attachment to alignment. You spent months, maybe years, trying to make it work. But now you realize you weren't asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong person. You weren't too emotional. You were giving depth to someone who only knew surface. You weren't hard to love. You were just trying to love people who don't love themselves. Now your standards are different. Now you're not chasing attention, you're chasing alignment. Now you don't crave butterflies, you crave peace. Now you're not falling for potential, you're choosing proof. And the most beautiful part? You're not bitter. You're just done. Call to action. Stop reopening wounds just to check if they still hurt. Stop hoping people will see your worth when they're blind by choice. Stop waiting for closure like it's a package in the mail. It's not coming. You create your peace. You enforce your standards. You protect your mind like a temple. And every time you want to break the silence, remind yourself, you are no longer that version of you who begged to be chosen. You are no longer the one who needed approval to feel worthy. You are no longer confused about what you deserve. Because now you walk away without looking back. Now you speak less and heal more. Now you love yourself more than you miss them. And that is the moment life changes. One final reminder. Letting go is not weakness, it's mastery. You don't detach because you stopped caring. You detach because you finally started caring about yourself. Read that again. Now breathe. And remember this. They don't need to understand why you left. You don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing peace. You are not responsible for their closure, only your own freedom. This is your time. This is your healing. This is your rebirth. So stop explaining. Stop chasing. Stop bleeding for people who never even tried to stop the cut. Be the one who chose peace over potential. Be the one who walked away with grace. Be the one who became whole without them. And let that be your power.